So this is chapter 5, the beginning of chapter 5 on statistics. So we're going to start off today with a review and a preview of what we'll be looking at in this class, or in this chapter. So statistics is the name given to the branch of math concerned with the collection, analysis, and interpretation of numerical data. The collection of data by various methods we've covered in other courses. We've talked about the population or taking a sample from the population. Once the data is collected, it's analyzed in a variety of ways, and we have talked about those variety of ways in previous courses with the terms averages, mean, median, and mode. So for example, when students receive their unit test marks, they often ask, what's the class average? I never tell you what the class average is because it doesn't really matter how the class did, it matters how you did. I worry about the class average. Once data has been collected, it's useful to describe the data by one central value. There are three different ways that we can describe data, three measures of central tendency. There's the mean, and the mean is the one that we tend to gravitate to. It's what we normally call the average. When we are talking about the mean of a population, we use the Greek symbol mu. That's this little, looks like a long-tailed U. If we are talking about a sample, we use the letter X with a line over top of it. Again, sometimes these do get interchanged. We use mu when we're actually dealing with X. The mean of a population and the mean of a sample are both calculated the same way. And it's calculated by adding all of the data values and then dividing by the number of values that were in that set. So if I was calculating the class average, let's say, of exam marks for your class, I would add them all together and divide by 9 because there's 9 students in the class. Then there's median. Median's determined by finding where the middle is. So the first thing I have to do is I have to sort my data into numerical order from low to high. And then I find the center. If there's an odd number of data values, so if there's 11 values in the set, I'm only going to have one center part. If there was 12 values in the set, when I try to get to the middle, I'm actually going to have 2 numbers. So I find the average of those 2 numbers. And then there's the mode. The mode is the data value that occurs most frequently. And it is possible to have no mode, meaning nothing occurs more than once, or to have multiple modes. So some examples of when it might be more prudent to pick the mode or the median. Mode, the best example I can think of is if you are in a store and you're trying to calculate which size is most popular. That's when you're going to be worried about mode. I'm not going to take all of the shoes that I sold of the sizes, add them together and divide. I want to know which shoe size I sold the most of because that's going to drive my ordering in the future. Median sometimes works when we're trying to get rid of some of those outliers. So the example I use for this sometimes has to do with reporting of salaries. When companies say that the average employee makes this much money per year, they're talking about mean. And that might not actually be true because in any company, the bulk of your workers tend to earn a lower income. And then you have those upper personnel, your executive personnel, that earn huge salaries. And if I take their big salaries and I average them off with the little people, it adjusts things. So going back to the example that I know most strongly was a report that I had to do like 20 some years ago. And it was on before the liquor board did their privatization. And there was an article that said that the average employee made like $45,000 a year. Well, that was a very misleading statement because if you said the average employee, people thought of the person that they went and got their stuff from at the store. And that's not what that person made. Like very few of those people ever made, like maybe the managers made $45,000 at that point in time, but most of the non-managerial staff were lucky if they made half of that. And it was because, again, they took all of those executives and put them into the pool. So a median measure might actually be more appropriate because that's going to be giving everybody's salaries, putting them in numerical order, and then finding the middle. So those high salaries at the one end are going to cancel out the low salaries, and you're going to get a better reading. So let's look at class example number 1. The data shown is to the nearest minute for high school students to drive to school on each of the last 10 days. So I want you to calculate the mean driving time for the data. So how would I find the mean? What would I do? How do I find the average of this set? Okay, so I want you to do that. Add them all up and divide by the number in the set. Third. If I add these all together, what did I get? 142. And what would I divide by? So on average, I can say it takes about 14.2 minutes to drive to school. The mode is the one that occurs most often. Which number occurred most often in this set? 15. It occurs twice. Now, if my data doesn't have a lot of outliers or things that is going to skew the information, my mean and my mode and my median, they should be approximately the same. The only time that they're not is when I have those outliers that really adjust or can put an impact on the data. So let's look at class example number 2. Haida Keys unit test marks in English 20 and Math 20 are given below. Calculate the median for each. So in order to calculate median, I have to take the English scores and put them in numerical order. So what's the smallest number in this set? Followed by? What's the next one?
65.
Then?
71.
After 67? After 71? After 78? And after, then we have 8. So now I want to find where dead center is. So I cancel these two out, I cancel these two out, I cancel these two out. 71 is in the middle. So the mean, or the median for English was 71. So now if I look at the math marks, what's the lowest math mark?
61.
Okay, followed by?
72.
Then? Then?
84.
So again, now I'm trying to find the center. So if I start from the outside and I work my way in, I have two center values. I have 74 and 78. So I find the average of those two. Where's the middle between 74 and 78? 76. So the math mark, the median is 76%. In the third example, if the mean of the data set 10, 4, 7, 12, 9, 4, x, and 6 is equal to 7, find the value of 6. So that means if I go 10 plus 4 plus 7 plus 12 plus 9 plus 4 plus x plus 6 and divide this by 9, because there's 9 values in the set, the answer will equal 7. So I want to solve for x. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to add all these numbers on the top. Do that for me. 10 plus 4 plus 12 plus 9 plus 9 plus 4 plus 6. Tell me what you get when you've got that done.
What's that? Do we add that X or?
Pardon me? Just add the numbers along the top.
60.
61. So I have 61 plus x divided by 9 equals 7. And my goal is to get the x by itself. So I have to think in terms of order of operations. I would take x, add it to 61, and then divide that answer by 9. So if I work backwards, instead of dividing by 9, I would multiply by 9. So I multiply both sides by 9. What's 9 times 7?
63.
How do I get x by itself? So how do I get rid of the 61?
Minus 61.
Minus 61. And what is 63 minus 61? So there's the value of x. Now, sometimes instead of being given a data set, you could be given a frequency set. So the data below shows the number of touchdowns thrown by Jason, who's the school's quarterback during his high school career. So in the first game, he threw no touchdowns. Then he threw 1. Then he threw 0. Then he threw 2. All the way through. So this is game 1, game 2, game 3, game 4. So it says calculate to 1 decimal place if necessary the mean, median, and mode for the number of touchdowns per game. So let's figure out the mean. For the mean, I'm going to add all of these together. So the zeros I don't need to worry about. 1 plus 2 is? Plus 1?
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 5, 6, 7.
What'd you get?
27.
27. How many games did he play?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
So what's 27 divided by 19?
5.
So to 1 decimal place, 1.4 touchdowns per game. Let's look at the mode next.
Definitely 2.
Definitely 2. How many 2s do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 2s. And then I had 2 3s. How many 1s? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 1s. And 3 zeros. So the mode, 1 and 2. There's 2 modes. And then the median, I have to put these in numerical order and then find the middle. So the middle, if I have 19 data values, the center comes at 10. Right? Move in 3, move in another 3, into. 1 touchdown per game is the median. Now, the problem with this is because the zeros and the 1s and the 2s and the 3s occur so often. Let's go off. So because these data values occur so often, it can become quite confusing when you're trying to organize them out. It can be very easy to mix a number. So Suzanne did a frequency chart. And basically what she said is 3 of the games had 0, 7 of the games had 1 touchdown, 7 had 2, and 2 of them had 3. So if instead I used a frequency table, could I still find the mean, median, and mode? Well, how would I find the mode using the frequency table? What does mode stand for again?
So like the number that occurs the most.
The number that occurs the most. So what would I be looking at?
7.
7. I'd be looking at the number of games that occurred the most. So the mode would be the number of games that occurred the most which is still 1 and 2 touchdowns. So mode is actually quite easy to find on a frequency table because I just look at the highest frequency. This corresponds to the frequency. The mean. Well, if you remember above, how did we find the mean? We added everything together. So if I look at this is 3 games with 0 points. So the sum of that would be 3. Then I have 7 games with 1 touchdown each. So it would be another 7 points. 7 games with 2 touchdowns each. So that would give me 14 touchdowns. And 2 games with 3 touchdowns. If I go through and add these together, I've got 7 plus 14 plus 6. That's still the 27 that I got above. And I still have 19 pieces of information, which I can get by adding the total up in my frequency. And I still get 1.4. The median is probably the harder one to do from the frequency table. The median is the middle, so I have to find out where the center lies. So I start off with the frequency itself. The frequency is 19. So the middle of 19, or if I have 19 terms lined up, the middle is term 10. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I have 9 pieces on each side. So the 10th term becomes my middle. So now if I start adding these, where do I find the 10th term? Right here. So 3 plus 7 would give me the 10th term, which would give me 1 touchdown. So that's how I could use a frequency table to find these 3 measures of central tendency. I want you to practice by doing all of the questions. All of them. This is a continuation from lesson number 1 that we did in last class. Review and preview. So what we looked at in the last class is we looked at the idea of a sample and a population. So a population is everything that belongs to that particular data group. A sample would be choosing a portion of it. So for example, if I'm holding an election in Alberta in the upcoming months, the population of my voters would be every eligible person from the age of 18 up that qualifies to vote. From there, I could choose a sample to maybe poll to ask who are you going to vote for in the next election, because I wouldn't be able to ask everyone. It would be too costly and too time consuming. When we get the information from those types of polls, from those surveys, I can arrange the data in a certain way. I can calculate the mean of the data. That's called the average, and that's what we're used to typically doing. If you're figuring out the average on your tests, if you had 5 tests in math class, you would add all 5 tests together, divide by 5, and that would give you your overall average. The median is the one that's in the middle. So I put them in numerical order, and I find that middle value, that becomes my median. And sometimes that helps if I have those outliers. So let's say, again, if I go back to my example with my tests, suppose in my 5 tests I bombed one of them. I got like 30%, but everything else I got like 70, 80. I might find that the median is a better representation because that outlier, when I try to calculate the average, is going to skew the results. And then there's the mode. The mode is what happens most often. It occurs most frequently. You can have multiple modes and you can have no modes. So nothing might repeat, or you could have 2 or 3 things that repeat multiple times. So last class, we calculated these out by ourselves. We calculated them out pen and paper. Your calculator has the ability to calculate measures of central tendency using the stat feature. So on these pages, it goes through, so this is page 202 in your book, it goes through step by step how to use the graphing calculator to find out these measures of central tendency. So if we use this as our data value, we grab our calculator, make sure it gets turned on, and what we do is we press stat and first of all, we press stat and edit. And if we press stat and edit, we get these lists. If I happen to have numbers in this list, so let's say when I looked at this, this is what my lists look like. Something like that. Doesn't matter what numbers were in. Let's just say there were numbers in there. I can clear those lists one of 2 ways. I can go up to the top, highlight the list, and then press clear, not delete. Delete gets rid of the list. I just want to clear the list. Clear, enter. It clears the list. Or what I could do is I could press the second button, the plus button, and right here, choice number 4, clear all lists, and then press enter. So I could clear the list one of 2 ways. So that when I press stat and edit, I no longer have anything in my list. Now I can type in these numbers. And I type them in. It doesn't matter the order I type them in, but if you notice 14 appears twice, I need to put it in there twice. So I have 10, 9, 8, 7, 14, 14, 13, 5, 11, and 16. There's my list. So from here I can go back to my main screen. So I go second and mode, which is the quit above, and I get back to my main screen where I had cleared my list from before. So now the next part is, let's say I want to get some of these measures of central tendency. Well, I press the stat button again, only this time I don't want to edit the lists. I want to do calculations with the list. And the calculation that I want to do is a 1 var stat, 1 variation stat. Now, depending on your calculator may come up with 2 different screens. So if you look in the book, the calculator that the screen that they come up with just has 1 var stat, and then the cursor goes at the end. The calculator that I have has the lists in it. List L1, I don't have a frequency list. I would leave that blank, and then I would just go down to calculate. Where you are at here, if you press enter, this screen should come up no matter what, and it should look the same as mine. There's a lot of information on this screen. Some of it we will use, some of it we will not use. The first thing on that screen is that X with that line over it. And if you remember from the last class when we were talking about average or talking about mean, we said we could indicate mean with either that funny looking U or that X with the line on top of it. This is the mean. This is the mean of the data that I've put into the calculator, x, or 10.7. Then to find the median, I have to scroll down till I see the word MED. So this right here, N, this tells me how many numbers were in the data set. The minimum data was 5. The median was 10.5. And the max was 16. So this part of the screen tells me the smallest number, the biggest number, and where the middle lie, which was 10.5. And then the mode is not something the calculator calculates. It does not calculate the mode. I would have to look for the mode myself. So if we scroll to the bottom of the page, state the mean, median, and mode for the data in the above. The mean was this value right here, 10.7. The median was the MED, which was 10.5. And the mode, I have to go back to the data set and figure out which one appeared more than once. That was 14. So there's my mean, median, and mode. The next calculator entry looks at frequency tables. So the frequency table was like that touchdown example that we had done the last class, where we recorded the number of games that he had: 0 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. So again, I can do the exact same thing. Only when I put this into my calculator this time, so I press Stat, Edit, I'm going to clear this list off. So clear and enter. And then what I'm going to do is the number of touchdowns per game is going to go into my L1. And the frequency is the number of times each of those items occurred. That's going to go into my L2. I'm going to start off with my L1. 0, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to scroll over to my L2, where I have 3, 7, 7, and 2. Now I need to do my calculations. So I don't actually have to quit. I can just press Stat and go over to Calc. It's still a 1 vars, always a 1 vars. This time, when you put it into your list, so if your calculator is like mine, you're going to go L1. The frequency list, you're going to go L2. And to get L2 on your calculator, you go second and the 2 button. Everything in blue I access by pressing the second button first. So on your calculator screens, most of you will probably have 1 var stat. And then you have to press L1, comma, L2. So the way that looks, L1 would be second and the number 1. The comma button is right between the x squared and the open bracket. And then L2. So you're going to have it written as 1 var stat L1, L2. This tells the calculator to put this information together, that there are 3 of the zeros, 7 of the 1s, 7 of the 2s, and 2 of the 3s. And then I'm going to calculate. And there's where my calculator stands. There are 19 items in my list, which 3 plus 7 plus 7 plus 2 equals 19. The mean is 1.4210. That's what we got last time. The median is 1, and that's what we got last time as well. So it's another way of calculating using the calculator to find this information out for you. Again, the calculator does not calculate mode, but we can pull mode from my frequency list, the ones that occurred most often. So the mean, the median, and the mode. The mode was 1 and 2. The median was 1. And the mean was 1.4. which is exactly what we got last time. So what I want you to work on for about the next 10 or 15 minutes is I want you to use your calculator, and I want you to look at questions number 7 through 11 using your calculator to do those questions, and then you'll go on to the next lesson.